Welcome back, everybody. As Anya says, I look after the solution architecture function for Integrity, the group around Europe and Africa. And there's no question that the hot topic in any country that I'm talking in is XDR. So it does make some sense that we should pick apart that subject a little bit today. You would be led to think that you're in the middle of the boom of XDR, but actually statistics would show that really we're in the early adoption phase. There's a committed a compound annual growth rate currently of around about 1.7 billion, but over the between now and 2028, it's expected to grow to 8.8 billion. So actually, we're very much at the beginning of it, but you'd be mistaken for thinking that we're right in the middle of that. I'm not going to do any introductions in the interest of time because we're going to try to keep on track because apparently I'm not very funny. So let's let the actual funny man on. It's true, Tom. Yeah, I was particularly bad last week as well, wasn't I? Yeah. That's what I thought. Thanks for the feedback. So.
Should have been there.
Yeah, great. So let's kick straight in. Obviously, again, thank you for joining us, everybody. Dave, let's jump straight in terms of XDR. Why is XDR becoming the go-to for businesses? What are the positives? Inversely, what do they need to be looking out for in terms of undertaking an XDR journey?
Yeah, I think it's becoming clear that XDR is becoming a cornerstone of cybersecurity strategies. I think there's multiple reasons behind that. You're looking at, for example, increased threat visibility, so breaking down silos across the organization, whether that's across different infrastructure components, across applications, and kind of breaking down those silos, giving you that increased visibility. Threat detection then, you're looking at that improved detection across, as I said, across the environment. The analysis, the pace that you can do that with is much increased. I think as well, the speeding up that incident response capability as well is absolutely crucial, because obviously when you're in the middle of an incident, trying to consolidate all these information sources, understand exactly where you're exposed and try to progress through that incident response lifecycle, it's helping with that. I also think in terms of organizational efficiency. So what I mean by that is, say, if you look at your security operations function, right? If you're able to consolidate your tools, right, using a comprehensive XDR capability, well then you're reducing what you have to look after, what you have to monitor, and again you're able to focus on those more kind of key tasks or key deliverables, opening up the opportunity to potentially work on more value-adding activities as well. So I think there's several benefits to it in terms of the potential pitfalls or considerations. I think you need to think about the implementation complexity. So it's not an out-of-the-box solution, for example. There is a lot of complexity in terms of some of the elements you have to think about there. So the integration element, I can assure you, is not, again, not out of the box. You need to think about what components you're integrating with, how are you going to do that, what's it going to look like, across the life cycle as well. I think as well, another key consideration is around potential data overload. So, we've all been there historically. We remember when SIEM first came out, and SIEM was the silver bullet, and what happened? Everyone threw absolutely everything they had in it from a logging perspective. And then you're trying to tell the wood from the trees. So I do think that's an important element. You need to think about what are you capturing, why are you capturing it, feeding that into your strategy. And then another element that I would say you need to just think about is that vendor lock-in piece as well. So if you're looking at XDR, just to make sure in terms of that longer term organizational strategy, does it fit in with what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. So and specifically, you're going down the sort of avenue there of open versus closed XDR type choices, right? And I think that is an absolute consideration. And before I go on to that, is this helping to eliminate they do more with less in terms of budgets as well. You know, businesses are constantly under pressure. Are you seeing any alleviation, or you know, is it helping talk to those challenges as well commercially?
Yeah, I do. Like what we're seeing across the marketplace, like that consolidation piece. I know we've been saying it for a while, but trying to move away from that point solution for every problem that we have. And again, looking at that strategic roadmap and thinking, right, when we look at, you know, solution consolidation or capability consolidation, what problems are we trying to solve? How does it fit with our strategy? And then that naturally then leads to, right, we're solving more problems, and theoretically we're doing that with less people, less resources, less investment.
Amir, I'm going to you as the sort of independent here, but what's your views in terms of open versus closed XDR considerations? Is there a right answer in the market? Should I always be going open?
I think there's advantages to both, really depending on what you've done with your organisation historically. You know, David was talking about silos and breaking down those silos, and this is where you would typically lean towards a more open-based approach. If you've spent years buying best-of-breed based technologies and you want to integrate them into your XDR platform, I think that's where you ultimately go. If you're quite immature in terms of where you are, then, you know, a closed source and having a single solution to do that. But I think ultimately, to get the best out of an XDR, you will end up going down the open source route.
It gives you the flexibility potentially to unpick, should for any reason, you know, that relationship, that support model, you know, the detection efficacy potentially goes south. It does make a lot of sense, but equally, you know, there's arguments for I guess Microsoft is probably quite a good example of something in terms of that close. That's a nasty word. I shouldn't say that. Okay, great, thanks. Tom, any view in terms of barriers to effectively implementing XDR, AI-fueled technologies?
Well, anything that's got the word AI in it, I think, is always going to have a barrier to entry. And you know, AI is not a new thing. We've had it since 1956. What we've had recently are the large language models that allow any idiot to be able to use AI, you know, in their bedroom.
Are you talking about me again?
Well, I mean, I wasn't. You know, let's not go there. But the key barrier, I think, and I've done a lot of talks with a lot of companies and people, and that most of the time the barriers to AI is the board or the exec leadership, because they don't want their secrets going out, and that's absolutely right. You know, they don't want to bring AI in. It's the big, hairy, scary monster that they're worried about. But if they don't, they're going to be behind the curve somewhat. The great analogy I had was that was given to me was, imagine you're in the Bronze Age and you've got a bronze forged sword, and then somebody comes along with an iron forged sword and just lops your sword in half. You're left there looking at the stump of an old sword. That's pretty much what we're going to be if we don't embrace AI. The challenge, of course, is it's so new, it's so unregulated, it's so unknown. There's new models coming in and out all the time. We don't know their provenance. We don't know, you know, what data they've been trained on. There's, you know, we don't know how much they openly share. Or we have seen some that openly share an awful lot. So it's a real, you know, thorny problem for anybody to get used to.
Yeah, well said. Nicole, how is AI helping enhance, you know, the XDR platforms in terms of threat detection efficacy? How I know, you know, Darktrace, it's very much at the front and center of DT's platform. How is it helping to enhance?
Yeah, so AI is being used in a lot of XDR solutions, commonly through machine learning, talking more specifically about supervised machine learning, and sometimes the shiny generative AI as well. These are trained on big data, so third-party big data sources, and supervised machine learning is really great at helping you know, detect known threats, but it can be, you know, not so useful when it comes to those 0 days and unknown threats that haven't quite made it to the data set yet. And then obviously agreed with Tom's comments about generative AI. It has fantastic use cases in security, for example, being that human-machine interface to allow you to query data, replicate, automate repetitive tasks more effectively, but it doesn't replace the core detection, response, and investigative capabilities that a SOC team needs. So, you know, with the threat landscape, the way things are going with sophisticated threats, polymorphic malware, living off the land, we really need to start thinking about AI that can allow security teams to be able to evolve along with the threat landscape. And an approach to AI that isn't so commonly used right now in XDR is unsupervised machine learning that is being trained on the organization's data, so it kind of avoids the pitfalls of wondering, you know, where your data is going, and it allows an organization to be able to keep up with evolving threats, you know, really pushing that security team to become more proactive in that sense. I realize I've spoken a lot about the different types of AI. Just want to kind of round it off by saying, you know, it doesn't mean that supervised machine learning and LLMs or generative AI don't have a place in threat detection and response. You know, as you've said, we've been applying AI across email, cloud, identity, and network for over 13 years now, and we found that the best approach actually involves adopting a multi-layered approach to AI. So recognizing different types of AI, leveraging them for their different strengths. For example, applying supervised machine learning to replicate the investigation process of a human analyst, but at machine speed. And that is a really powerful use case overall by taking that holistic approach.
And I want to pick up on that point there, and I think the urgency of this is often understated, because to your point about machine speed, our attackers, the criminals, they're not held back by ethics or morals or doubts or anything like that. They're hugely incentivized to do this. They have embraced AI to the very extent that now there really is no difference between a nation state attacker and, you know, a criminal attacker. And they're attacking at machine speed, and we're responding at the speed of Dave in the SOC, who's actually, you know, probably an intern and is halfway through his 3 a.m. snack when the attack happens. So there's a real sort of asynchronicity to how we're approaching this. And the fact is, why are we bringing, you know, a knife to a gunfight or you know, a checkers board to a chess game?
Yeah, I thought we were going to change the name, Tom. Dave in Ireland was going to be Dara.
Who was it going to be?
Dara.
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 It was going to be Dara. Yeah, but I was worried that it was going to be Dara O'Brien here. So
fine. Okay, fair enough. No. Look, on that theme, Francis, this is a question specifically on you, because I know it's close to your heart in terms of your sort of philosophy around agents and the year of the agent, things like that. You know, do we see a place in a world where AI, XDR platforms replace the need for agents for the humans?
For the humans? Well, I think we'll leave Dave in the SOC for a while longer, maybe. It won't replace them, it'll augment them, for what I see with the technology as it stands at the moment. And I think there's two key pieces that we need to consider here. A lot of the large language models are trained outside of the organizations and then brought in and then have to learn and learn what bad looks like for that organization. The second piece of this, XDR is also a respond capability. You really don't want a machine taking response actions that could cripple your enterprise applications or create service outages. So you still need a human in the loop for certain scenarios to ensure the relevance and the context of your environment. So is there a pen test going on? Is there a red team activity happening? Does some application do some weird stuff once a quarter that looks like it's DDoSing itself or creating an attack? You don't want autonomous systems taking an action on those things. You can, for low-hanging fruit like end user account lockout, etc., apply that response element out of the box. But as that layers up in terms of criticality of the system, the environmental awareness, contextual awareness of the environment, you still need somebody who understands the organization in that seat. So if it's Dave at 3 o'clock in the morning munching on something, you know, he probably still needs to check if that action is appropriate.
yeah. And I think the human in the loop element is important, but it's just one part of the puzzle, because the problem with a lot of the AI models, and we don't see much talk about this, is left to their own devices, they'll often learn from all the wrong sources. I mean, we all remember Microsoft's Nazi AI agent that went loose on Twitter a few years back. You know, so not only do you need that human in the loop to make sure that responses are correct, but you also need to tune it. You need to make sure that you are harmonizing the data, making sure that the sources it's gathering are coming from the right places, that it hasn't been intentionally poisoned as well, because the attackers will not just attack us, they'll attack the baseline models, AI models, that we are ingesting in order to defend against them. So I think there's a variety of elements here that we need to consider.
And I would just say one more thing on that piece, and it's back to what Dave touched on as well. A lot of organizations, your SIEM SOC piece, the logs, it's the last tick the box. It's a policy requirement. Everything goes to the SIEM. Bang, send all that raw data there. We need to get a lot smarter at relevant data. So what is the security relevance of this data that you're training the LLM on? And in order to have that relevance, you need people who understand the applications, the downstream systems, etc. So there's a far greater dependency now on architecture to understand what it is being delivered into the organization and what bad looks like for that entity.
I think a lot of the points and the concerns around this type of AI adoption and poisoning and making sure the data is relevant comes down to making sure that we're using the right AI for the right use case. There's no point, I mean, there would be limited effectiveness using an AI model that's trained on someone else's data that has no relevance to your organization. But instead, if we train AI on an organization's data, you don't need to worry about agency, the data's not going anywhere, and you know that the AI, because it knows what's right for your organization and what's normal, you can then trust it to take actions within areas and limits that you're comfortable with autonomously. So in a perfect world, we can actually have AI that investigates, that is trusted with the human still around the loop, seeing all the outputs and being able to, supervise, but also, not worry about the AI taking business down because it knows your business.
Yeah, it should be like Peter Drucker's 80-20 rule. Let it deal with the 80% of the noise so that the humans can add the value to that final 20% and actually use their instincts training, whatever you like to call it, to get to the root cause, and potentially use the AI as an assistant in doing so.
So it's not just about automation now, it's about AI augmentation and autonomous benefits of it.
I mean, we've got to make friends with our future robot overlords anyway, right? So now's probably a good time.
Amir, Nick, Tom, obviously as vendors, there's a responsibility around AI, LLMs. How do we as consumers ensure confidence that the governance, it's been used responsibly, and there's appropriate governance around the investments of AI, LLM in your technology, respective technologies? Amir?
Absolutely. I mean, we are consistently leveraging AI to better the experience our users get from our platform. But I think you're absolutely right. There has to be an absolute governance in there. A couple of things, governance internally on how we leverage that technology within our own platforms. I think being very honest with our clients and our consumers of our platforms around trust centers and giving them access into what's being used, what's being consumed, and then taking a step further in terms of what is the data that's being used to train those models, and is it being customer data, and if so, how are we masquerading that data, and how are we making sure that real data is not being used, but also from SaaS-based platforms that one type of client's data is not being used to train a model for somebody else, as what we were talking about earlier. And this is where a lot of masquerading will certainly come into it as well, plus a bunch of whole other things that I'm sure we'll cover off.
Yeah, I think as vendors, we've been in the AI game for a long time, and we do have that responsibility to make it transparent to our consumers, what data set is the AI trained on, what verification methods have we put in place, is it continuously learning, or is it pre-trained? And these are all questions that we should be equipping our consumers to be able to ask us. Just going to do a cheeky plug here for our stand. You can come ask us these questions and enter our raffle at the same time after this talk, so please do.
The winner will be selected by an AI.
Exactly.
Just checking. Yeah, I think like every time you hear a company that's had a breach, the first words out of their mouth are, "We take security seriously." Well, we also take AI security seriously. We've been using AI, as have every vendor around here today. We've been using AI for years. It's just that we may have called it machine learning in the past or something like that. But it's always been there. There's always been, the algorithm, the models there doing the work. I think what's key for the future, and certainly for our, for the integrity of our little plug there.
Cheers for that.
The integrity 360 of our solutions. The integrity of our solutions to our customers is ensuring that the provenance of these models is known. That doesn't mean opening up the secret source, but it does mean making sure that there is a confidence in, to Amir's point, where the data is coming from, where your data is coming into it, what's happening to it, and where is it going afterwards.
Absolutely.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks. Francis, Dave, how do we make sure that XDR systems stay equipped in order to deal with the advanced threats as they begin to materialize and continue to grow?
I think particularly, obviously we've touched a lot on AI. I think we have to ensure that kind of adaptability, continuous improvement. So, looking at the machine learning, which you've mentioned, continuously updating the models. I think as well, like behavioral analysis is a key element to this. So using AI and building up that baseline of what, kind of standard user behavior looks like, and then, having the ability to act upon, I guess you're talking about the 80-20 rule, having the ability to act on that 20%, that important part. And that's where the kind of the human interaction with AI comes. And then I guess one of the last points I'd touch on would be around, I think as well, AI has a big role to play with XDR in the threat intelligence space. Yeah. So again, it plays into the 80-20 because you're talking about focused remediation. Again, we're all resource constrained, we're all budget constrained, but having that focused, having that contextualized lens to go, this is what we need to worry about, this is where we put the resources, this is where, where we put the money, as opposed to going, we're going to put out all the fires.
Yeah, let it do the heavy lifting for you, so you can do the final analysis of what it comes up with.
I'd just say to finish, Nick, I'd say stay curious, don't get complacent, validate.
Yeah, well said. We are on. I'm going to skip over to the advanced piece. There was actually there's a theme in here with CTEM and cloud and Amir. I think it's we're seeing and understanding detection and response capabilities. What advancements? I'd like to say 3 to 5 years, but let's be honest. The future in cyber is tomorrow. What advancements do we need to be making in order to ensure that we can continue to have that heuristic visibility and keeping up to speed with the new and emerging threats?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's an absolute given. I think we've all pretty much touched on it today. The leveraging of AI within your technologies is going to become more and more prevalent. Understand them. I think that's an absolute key use case that we need to all get on board with. I think further down the field is looking at technologies that are more cloud native as well, especially as a lot more technologies are embracing the cloud and organizations are moving applications and workloads into those public cloud domains. Yeah. And I think there's also an element in there as well around seeking help in terms of managed services. Yeah. I think Tom hit the nail on the head around AI and them leveraging it to the fact where we can't respond quick enough, with teams not growing. And a common use case that I'm always hearing is my budgets are static, my teams are static or shrinking, but I'm getting bombarded with more. Yeah. So this is where we need to start leveraging out resources and tools that do support our business, whether that's a managed service, such as Integrity, and those tools that can help expedite how we get that instant response back into the business.
And I think, as I say, we understand detection and response. We now understand, and I'll sort of finish on this. We understand that better than ever, right? We've got frameworks out there to help measure success against. I absolutely agree that the natural evolution is into cloud. I think it's been very user-centric focused, detection and response, identity focused. But I think that also in terms of use of that time, right use of that time, we now need to consider about the proactive prevention mechanisms, moving more towards exposure management, looking to see how we can focus the minimal amount of effort for the maximum amount of risk reduction in our organisation. I think that when we start to shift left along the kill chain and start to look to reduce and eliminate exposures first, I think that's a better use of time, thus reducing the onus on the detection and response capabilities in the first place. So, on that note, I wasn't too bad there, Anya, hopefully. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance on the panel today.
Give it up for Nick and panel.